We called it the Grand Tournament of Velkara, a ritual of dominance, broadcast through every starnet and HoloLens across the spiral. The air itself trembled with the roar of empires, 1,000 banners flaring in the ultraviolet winds above the arena's dome. Even the suns burned brighter on tournament days, as if the cosmos demanded witness to the arrogance of its children. I was among the Kortal observers, a dying people clinging to memory and dust. Our delegation sat far from the prime seats beneath the shadow of the Dracon banners. We had come to watch, not to win. The Kortal had not sent a champion in decades. But that day, someone did walk onto the sand. He was a boy, frail, limping, one horn snapped at the base. The laughter that rose from the stands was cruel and effortless. Even I joined it at first. What else could this crippled child be but a jest? A mockery offered by the universe itself? He stumbled forward, clutching a shattered training spear. His scales had lost their sheen, the gray of forgotten graves. "Remove him!" barked one overseer through the amplifiers. "This is not a spectacle, it's a farce." Yet the boy did not leave. He stood trembling, blinded in one eye, staring at the massive gates as though waiting for something. Someone, and then silence. Every frequency stilled. Every heart paused. The sound of gravity drums faded to a single echo. From the shadowed corridor, a figure stepped into the light. Not a gladiator. Not a warrior of any known house. A human. He wore no armor, only a worn coat of fabric that caught the desert wind like a banner of ghosts. His boots were scuffed, his hands scarred, his eyes unreadable. The hollow screens magnified his face across the arena, and a ripple passed through the grandstands. I saw it in the older veterans first, the way they straightened, the way their breath hitched. One whispered the name Terran as if invoking an ancient god. The crowd murmured restless. What was a human doing here? They were myth, rumor, half legend, the species that fought the Orion Wars and vanished when peace became unbearable. Their presence in the tournament was sacrilege. The human walked forward unhurried. He passed the guards who raised their weapons, and though none fired, each hand trembled on the trigger. He reached the boy, who knelt in the dust. I felt something change then, not in the air but in us. He crouched beside the child. His voice carried through the amplifiers not by volume but by stillness. "Get up." 2 words. Nothing more. The boy looked up through his clouded eye, tears streaking the sand from his cheeks. "Get up," the human said again. Quieter this time, and the galaxy seemed to lean closer. I cannot explain what happened next. It was as if those words carried weight, gravity older than suns. The boy's shoulders straightened. He pressed his good foot beneath him and stood. The arena, the largest in the Orion R, went utterly silent. Even the wind held its breath. He did not look stronger. He did not glow or roar or rise in some miracle of energy. He simply stood. But in that simple act, something shifted across millions of watchers, across every species that had forgotten what defiance without power looked like. The overseers shouted. Guards advanced. The human did not move. He placed one hand on the boy's shoulder, a gesture both ordinary and infinite, and every veteran of every war remembered why humans were feared, because they never came to win. They came to change. And as the sun bled crimson across the horizon, the crowd felt it, a current beneath their bones. The human turned his gaze upward, eyes reflecting the dying light, and for one brief heartbeat, the stars seemed to dim in response. Somewhere deep beneath the stands, a comms officer whispered into his mic, voice shaking. "We have a problem. A human just entered the field." And above them all, the old soldier's voice echoed once more. Soft, steady, absolute. "Now, let's begin." There is a moment, a pause so absolute it feels like the universe itself has forgotten to breathe. Every lens, every sensor, every neural uplink across the spiral converges upon one impossible image. A human, unarmed, kneeling in the dust beside a trembling alien boy. The overseers panic first. Their holograms flicker across the arena, shouting in a dozen dialects. "Unauthorized presence. Containment protocol initiated." The control spires flare to life, energy fields humming to form a dome of suppression. But they hesitate. Every automated turret, every drone array flickers with warning lights. The targeting systems struggle to lock on, as though something in the air refuses to let them. The boy shivers, clutching his broken spear. His one good eye flicks between the overseers and the human beside him. The human doesn't move. He kneels, resting his weathered palm upon the spear's splintered shaft. The air hums faintly as his voice cuts through the silence, low, calm, ancient. "A weapon's not what you hold," he says. "It's what you stand for." The translation modules stutter. The phrase doesn't fit any linguistic pattern. For a brief, terrifying instant, the crowd hears the raw tone, the rhythm of something too old, too human, too precise. It vibrates against the bones, the boy's trembling slows. His breathing steadies. I felt it even from my observer's seat. The way that sentence didn't just pass through the air but settled into it, like a seed taking root. The kind of language that doesn't teach. It infects. All around me, the alien dignitaries exchange uneasy glances. Across light years in war rooms and citadels, commanders lean forward in silence. Every species that had once faced humanity feels an echo of ancient terror return. They've seen this before. The slow, quiet way humans spread defiance like a contagion. Not through force, through belief. The human rises, every movement deliberate, patient, unhurried. He offers the spear back to the boy, the same broken stick. Yet it feels heavier now, meaningful. The child grips it with both hands, straightening. I hear my own pulse thundering. "Why aren't they stopping him?" A voice hisses beside me. "Because they can't. Not truly. You can destroy ships, silence signals, crush bones. But you cannot stop an idea once it's whispered by a human." Above, the commentators struggle to fill the silence. The human appears to be assisting the contestant. This is highly irregular. Containment fields are destabilizing. Wait, look at the readings. His biosignature? Every word drowns beneath the weight of that single gaze. The human turns slowly, looking toward the grandstands, and for an instant, I swear, it feels like he's staring directly at me. Through meters of air, through my shell, through the layers of armor and doubt. He looks tired. So tired. But his eyes burn, not like fire, but like something that has seen it all and still refuses to surrender. Behind him, the boy straightens further, lifting his chin. The spear steadies. The laughter from before does not return. Even the cruelest spectators have gone silent, unsettled by what they're seeing. The overseers attempt one final override. A surge of containment energy bursts from the spires, the light blinding, and yet when the glare fades, both figures stand untouched. Dust swirls harmlessly around them. The human's coat ripples. He doesn't look back. The child whispers something I cannot hear. The translators catch fragments. "Stand. Try again. I'm not afraid." The human nods once, satisfied. His hand falls away from the boy's shoulder, and suddenly, every ruler watching from orbit remembers. The archives, the wars, the times humanity entered their conflicts, not with fleets, but with words. The way morale shifted, the way entire civilizations rose against their own tyrants after a single Terran broadcast. Hope, the most dangerous contagion ever discovered. I hear someone behind me murmur, voice trembling, "They're doing it again." The human turns toward the main gate, where containment troops have assembled, 50 soldiers in powered armor. Weapons raised, he walks toward them, slowly, calmly. The commander barks, "Identify yourself!" The human pauses, eyes half closed, and answers, "Just a spectator." The soldiers do not fire. None of them do. The silence stretches until it feels unbearable. Then, the boy behind him takes one step forward. Just one. The human doesn't turn. He doesn't need to. Every camera in the arena locks onto that step. The broken spear gleams in the dying light. The crowd doesn't understand what they're feeling, but I do. It's the shift. The same one recorded in every Terran war, the moment before the impossible becomes inevitable. And somewhere, Deep beneath the stands, a transmission burst through the Overseer's encrypted channels. Priority alert. Human behavioral contagion detected. Initiate quarantine protocols immediately, but it's too late. The infection has already begun. The Overseers tried to stop it. Lights across the arena flared crimson, the great banners of the tournament flickering as system alerts screamed through the comm nets. Match suspended. Unauthorized human interference detected. But no one listened. Not the crowd, not the soldiers, not even the other competitors waiting in their holding chambers. The Spiral's most sacred tradition, the grand tournament of Velkhara, had been broken. Yet no one moved to restore order, because something far older than rules had taken hold. The crowd began to chant, not words, but sound, an instinctual roar that filled the atmosphere like a heartbeat. The Overseers hesitated. The tribunals in orbit argued, and through it all, the human remained still, arms crossed, coat fluttering faintly in the wind that rose from the energy vents beneath the arena floor. Beside him, the boy waited, spear trembling in his small hands. When the gate across the sands began to open again, a new sound entered the world, heavy, metallic, alive. The Jakor gladiator stepped through. I had seen one once before, in a war museum on Delrath 9. They called them the Forged, a species born of bone and biomechanical graft, muscle-bound to armor through veins of liquid steel. The one that entered the arena now towered nearly 4 meters high, its body a cathedral of black metal and red heat. The crowd roared its name, Krathar! His voice when he spoke was a growl through a furnace. This match is void, human. Step aside. The human did not answer. He merely shifted his stance, just slightly, folding his arms across his chest, watching. For reasons I could not name, that single gesture sent a chill through me deeper than any battle cry. The Overseers broadcast the rule reinstatement. The match will proceed. The Kortal youth faces the champion of Jakor, human entity classified as observer only. Any interference will result in... The sentence cut short as one of the Overseers realized no one was listening. Every eye, across every screen, every planet, every orbital city, fixed upon the small boy and the monstrous giant now facing each other across the sand. The signal feed zoomed close. The boy's hands shook, yes, but his breathing was even. His one good eye locked onto the Jakor, then flicked once toward the human. The old soldier gave no nod, no signal, no speech. Only that same steady gaze, cold, patient, unyielding, and then the gong sounded. The gladiator moved first, a blur of mass and fury, his bladed arms cutting the air with sonic bursts. The first strike should have ended it. The child should have been vaporized in the shockwave. But when the smoke cleared, the boy was not broken. He was moving, not running, flowing. He ducked under the swing with an awkward grace, rolled through the dust and spun the broken spear to deflect the next strike. Metal screamed against wood, sparks scattering like starlight. I remember gripping the rail, my claws digging through the alloy. This wasn't instinct. It wasn't luck. This was adaptation, instantaneous, perfect. The human didn't move an inch. His eyes tracked every step, every breath. And somehow, though he did not speak, I could feel the connection. The boy's movements were raw echoes of something older, deeper, human. Impossible, hissed the Draken general beside me. He has no neural training, no enhancement nodes, but none of that mattered. Because what we were seeing wasn't technology. It was memory, the human's presence. His calm, his defiance, had infected the boy like a pattern written into the very air. He fought not as a Kortal, not as a gladiator, but as something forged in the fires of human persistence. The Jakor bellowed, slamming a claw into the ground, sending shock waves through the sand. The boy staggered, but did not fall. His eyes blazed now with something new, comprehension. The crowd gasped as the child lunged forward, rolling beneath the gladiator's guard and striking the joint between two armor plates. The spear didn't pierce, but it cracked. For the first time, the Jakor stumbled, every network feed lit up with telemetry data. Commentators shouted across systems, "The child is learning mid-combat! Neurological resonance detected. Is this human interference or evolution?" In the stands, the old warlords of the Orion sector leaned forward, veterans who had faced humanity in the flesh centuries ago. I saw one of them whisper, "He's teaching him how to fight." The words echoed like a curse. The human didn't move, didn't need to. The lesson was already taking root. The boy dodged another blow, then another, faster, smoother. His steps mirrored the rhythm of the human's stance. Every mistake corrected within seconds. Every motion tighter, truer, sharper. The Jakor snarled, slamming his armored fist down with enough force to crater the ground, but the boy had already leapt aside. The shockwave rolled through the arena stands, sending spectators stumbling. Dust rose in choking clouds. When it cleared, the boy was standing behind the gladiator. His broken spear was raised, and the human, he was smiling, not proudly, not cruelly, just softly, like a teacher watching a student finally understand. The boy struck. The sound was small, barely audible over the hum of the containment field. A simple motion. But the point of that broken spear found the seam in the Jakor's armor, not deep, not fatal, but enough. The great gladiator froze. The energy running through his veins flickered, sputtered, dimmed, and then, impossibly, he knelt. Gasps erupted through the arena, billions of spectators watching a titan bow before a crippled child. The commentators fell silent. The human stepped forward now, closing the distance between them. He didn't look at the boy. He looked at the fallen giant, the warrior who had known only strength his entire life, and spoke so softly that only the translators caught it. "Now you understand." The Jakor's burning eyes lifted. "Understand what?" The human turned his gaze toward the boy, toward all of us, and said that it was never about power. Then he walked away, leaving the crowd in silence so heavy it bent the air. The overseers didn't speak. The tribunal feeds went dead. Even the Jakor bowed his head, and in the stands I realized something that chilled me to my core. That human had not entered the tournament to win a match. He had entered to awaken something buried, something the galaxy had long forgotten, the old, terrible inheritance of the species we once feared above all others, the Warborn. And as the boy lifted his cracked spear high, the arena erupted in a sound I will never forget. Not cheering, not chanting, but howling. The kind of cry that begins as awe and ends as revolution. Across 1,000 worlds, every ruler felt it. The shifting gravity of destiny. The humans were teaching again. Night had fallen over. Velkara. The twin suns that had once burned the arena's sands to glass now lay beneath the horizon, leaving only the glow of orbiting satellites and the hum of cooling machinery. The great stadium, emptied of its roaring millions, was now a hollow shell of echoes and faint light, a monument to something that had changed without anyone knowing how. Beneath its grand structure, past service tunnels and maintenance corridors, two figures sat in silence, the boy and the human. They said nothing at first. The silence was not awkward. It was necessary. After the storm of the day, after the impossible victory, there were no words that could fit. The boy sat with his knees drawn up, staring at the reflection of dim starlight in the oil puddles on the ground. His broken spear lay across his lap, now repaired only by a strip of torn human cloth. The faint smell of metal and ozone hung in the air. Finally, the boy spoke. His voice was small, raw. "Why did you help me?" The human didn't look at him. He seemed to be watching something far away, something beyond the metal ceiling, beyond the stars. After a long pause, he said quietly, "Because someone once did the same for me." The boy blinked, confused. "You were weak too?" That made the human smile, faintly, not in mockery but in memory. Once, everyone is before they decide not to be. The boy hesitated, staring at his reflection. His throat tightened. "My people said weakness is inherited, that we're born small, that we're born to lose." The human turned his head then, eyes tired but warm. They were half right, he said. Weakness is inherited, but so is strength. The boy frowned, unsure if he understood. The human didn't explain. He didn't have to. His tone carried the truth like gravity. Unseen to either of them, a small device mounted on the ceiling, an obsolete maintenance recorder, blinked to life. It had been installed centuries ago, meant to log mechanical conversations between droids. But now, repurposed by some curious technician, it recorded this. Every word. Strength isn't something you're born with, the human continued. It's something you pass on, from one act to the next. One choice, one voice? The boy tilted his head. Even to someone like me? The human smiled again, softer this time. Especially to someone like you. The boy stared at him for a long moment, then whispered, They'll hate you for this. The human chuckled, a sound rough as gravel, almost fond. They always do. It's how I know we're doing something right. Above them, the recorder streamed everything. Across invisible frequencies, the words leapt between satellites, relays, and networks. Within an hour, fragments reached the outer colonies. By dawn, every system had heard it. The human's words. The boy's questions. The sound of calm kindness shared between a veteran and a child. Entire fleets halted to listen. Soldiers on border worlds wept quietly in their bunks. In mining colonies, laborers repeated the line, So is strength, like a mantra. Captains engraved it into ship hulls. Priests recited it beside the dying. Across the galaxy, something far greater than rebellion began. Not a war, a remembering. The boy, unaware of all this, leaned back against the cold wall, his eyes half closed. My father used to say the stars are gods, he murmured. The human looked up through the ceiling as if he could see them. Then maybe gods are just people who never stopped standing up. Silence again. The faint hum of the city above, the ticking of cooling metal. Finally, the boy asked, Will they ever stop fearing you? The human exhaled slowly, watching the faint drift of dust in the air. Not if we do this right. He said it like a promise. Not to himself, not to the boy, but to every world that would hear the echo of that sentence, because by then the message had already become unstoppable. On worlds torn by war, enslaved species whispered the words in secret. Commanders who had once hunted humans began questioning their orders. And somewhere, deep within the encrypted archives of the overseers, analysts labeled the transmission. Classification, Human Cultural Contagion Event 01, Threat Level, Existential. But it was too late to contain it. The whisper had crossed the stars. And in that forgotten tunnel beneath Velcara, the boy finally smiled. Faint, shy, but real. He didn't know that his small voice and one old soldier's kindness had just shaken empires. He only knew that for the first time he was not afraid. The human stood, stretching, his silhouette outlined by the faint glow of emergency lights. Come on, he said. There's still work to do. The boy rose, clutching the repaired spear. What kind of work? The human glanced toward the distant horizon, where the dawn began to spill across the city's edges, like fire awakening from sleep. The kind that never ends. And as they walked toward the light, the galaxy listened. Not to thunder nor to conquest, but to a single human voice echoing through the void, turning silence into revolution. The Tribunal of Worlds was not built to feel small. It floated in high orbit above the capital moon of Velcara, a cathedral of metal and light, its spires piercing the void, its core chamber large enough to hold 100 warships. Every wall shimmered with living data, star maps, casualty records, and banners of fallen civilizations. The air itself was heavy with protocol and fear. Today, it was heavier than ever. At the center of the chamber stood a single figure, a human. No insignia, no weapon, no armor, just the plain, dark uniform and the quiet weight that seemed to pull every gaze toward him. Around him, the tribunal, the overseers, emperors, warlords, high clerics, filled their raised thrones in a ring of light. Their forms varied, Some were insectoid, others crystalline or amorphous, all haloed by power. They had gathered to pass judgment. The moment the humans stepped into the circle, 1,000 recording drones pivoted to focus. The whole galaxy was watching. "We begin the session of emergency review," announced the chair of the tribunal. A tall being of translucent glass, voice vibrating across frequencies. "The charge: human interference in sanctioned cultural arenas, subcharges, psychological manipulation, unauthorized mentorship, and the propagation of destabilizing ideology." The words hung in the air like a sentence already passed. The human stood silently. His posture was relaxed, hands folded behind his back. He didn't blink. One of the overseers, a scaled creature from the Keth Dominion, hissed, "Your presence has ignited unrest across 8 sectors. Armies have halted campaigns. Slaves refuse to work. Entire fleets question their commands. You have infected our order." The human tilted his head slightly. "With what?" The question disarmed the room. A ripple of murmurs followed. Uncomfortable, uncertain. Another voice thundered from the far end, a warlord of the Jakor, towering and armored in plates of breathing steel. His voice was a roar of echoing metal. "You turned a spectacle into a sermon. That child you helped? He speaks your words, and now entire species repeat them as gospel. Tell us, human, is this your new kind of war?" The human looked up toward the warlord's burning eyes. When he finally spoke, his tone was quiet, calm, but cutting through the noise like a blade. "You call it war. We call it reminding." A silence settled. Even the drones seemed to hesitate. The chair leaned forward. "You have spread human influence without consent. Entire civilizations now emulate your philosophy. You stand accused of cultural contamination. How do you plead?" The human looked around the room slowly, at the faces of beings who had conquered, enslaved, and rewritten galaxies in their own image. And then he said, "Guilty." Gasps rippled through the chamber. The chair raised a crystalline hand. "Then you accept punishment?" The human smiled faintly. "I didn't say I was wrong." Laughter, bitter, derisive, echoed from several thrones. One overseer slammed a clawed hand on his console. "What arrogance! You stand before the tribunal of worlds and mock us!" The human shook his head. "I don't mock you. I just understand you better than you think." He stepped forward, just one step, but the sound of his boots striking the platform carried like a drumbeat. "You fear us because you remember." The chair frowned. "Remember what?" The lights dimmed slightly as the human gestured to the central hollow array. "You keep records of every war," he said. "Activate archive, human conflicts." Reluctantly, the chair nodded. The chamber's air shimmered, and suddenly the space around them filled with light, projections of history, human fleets burning through void space, soldiers in vacuum armor standing against impossible odds, ships forming living shields around worlds that weren't theirs. The images cascaded like ghosts. Earthborn Marines holding the line at Dareth 9, unarmed medics sheltering alien children during the siege of Thal, a human ship, the Cassandra's Hope, ramming itself into a superweapon to save an enemy planet. The overseers watched in silence. Some had been there, some had fought those wars, and all remembered what came after, how humanity had vanished from the center stage, leaving ruins, legends, and questions. "You think we forgot?" one general growled. "We tried to forget." The human nodded slowly. "You did, but history remembers for you." He stepped closer to the center. "We don't fight to conquer. We never have. Every battle we fought, every sacrifice we made, it was to stop someone else from ending. You called us monsters because we refused to watch the fire spread." A low murmur rippled across the chamber, unease, confusion, disbelief. The Jakor warlord slammed his spear to the ground. "Then answer plainly, human. What are your kind planning now?" The question hung like thunder. The whole tribunal leaned forward. The human looked up, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet but vast, resonating through metal, mind, and marrow. We plan for them to stop needing us. For a heartbeat, the universe seemed to pause. Every translator flickered. Every recording drone hesitated, as if unsure how to translate the tone behind those words. Even the great warlord's armor ceased breathing. The human continued, his voice growing stronger. You think we want to rule? That we dream of thrones or banners? You misunderstand us. We fight so one day no one has to. We build so one day we can walk away. He raised his eyes, and for the first time, something almost divine passed through the chamber. Not light, not power, but conviction. We don't want your submission. We want your survival. The hollow around them shifted again, showing the aftermaths, cities rebuilt by human hands, alien children learning under human teachers, vast memorial fields where nameless soldiers lay beneath stones carved in 100 languages. We are not your conquerors, the human said. We are your reflection of what you could be when fear doesn't decide who you are. Silence swallowed the tribunal. The chair, once proud, radiant, now seemed dim. His crystalline form refracted faint blue light, trembling slightly. Then why do you still fight? He whispered. The human looked up toward the endless starfield beyond the dome. Because someone still has to. The warlord who had accused him earlier stared for a long moment. Then, almost reluctantly, he lowered his head. His spear, once held in defiance, sank point first into the ground. One by one, others followed. No verdict was spoken. None was needed. The human turned toward the exit. As he walked away, the hollow screens still flickered with fragments of history, human ships dissolving into the dark, their transmissions fading into static. And beneath the hum of the tribunal, one silent truth remained. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been their ships or their guns, or their impossible endurance. It was the belief that someone had to care first. That day, the tribunal adjourned without resolution. The overseers did not speak of it again, and not officially. But across their empires, words spread like wildfire. We planned for them to stop needing us. Children repeated it as a prayer. Soldiers carved it into armor. Rulers tried to ban it, and in doing so only made it stronger. The galaxy remembered, and in its remembering, something began to change. The sands of the arena were quiet now, not empty, but waiting. Days had passed since the human had stepped away. The story of his intervention had spread like fire across the spiral. Everywhere beings whispered the words he had left behind. So is strength. And yet here, in the crucible of Velkhara, only the boy remained. He stepped into the arena alone. No armor, no enhancements. Only his broken, repaired spear and the lessons carried in memory, sharper than any blade. His eyes swept the stands, sensing the anticipation, the dread, the disbelief. Across the sands, holographic projectors caught every movement, transmitting the scene to billions of watchers across the spiral. The gates at the opposite end opened with a metallic groan. His opponent emerged, a cybernetic champion bred for conquest, its body a lattice of living alloy and pulsating energy conduits. Its eyes glowed cold, precise, and filled with the accumulated hatred of countless battles. Muscle, metal, and logic fused into something designed to dominate without question. The crowd held its collective breath. The boy lifted his spear, not high, not in defiance, not in challenge, simply held, balanced, ready. Every movement measured, every stance rooted. The rhythm of the human's teaching pulsed in his limbs. Not reflex, but understanding. Grounded, patient, unstoppable. The champion lunged. The first strike smashed the sand where the boy had been standing, but he had already moved. Not fleeing, flowing, not reacting and anticipating. Every motion mirrored a lesson learned without words, honed into instinct. Every swing glinted off his spear. Every block absorbed and redirected energy. The audience could not comprehend it. Not the humans' distant legends, not the battlefield training manuals, not the trillions of simulations ever recorded. What they were seeing was adaptation in its purest form. Something impossible. Something terrifying. The champion's mechanical limbs whirred, firing plasma edges, extending blades, adjusting velocity in real time. The boy shifted, weaving, ducking, spinning, striking. Every movement was smaller than the last, more precise, more deadly in potential. The crowd leaned forward, craning their neural sensors, trying to decode the pattern, and then it hit them. This was not a contest. This was a message. Every plank of sand, every shadow cast by the rising suns, every hollow camera feeding the spiral bore witness. The boy's strength was not just in skill, but in legacy. The human's calm, patient guidance had become a seed, and here it grew, impossible and absolute. The cybernetic champion faltered. Calculations failed. Every logic loop collided with a variable it could not compute. Courage. The boy struck once. A single motion, clean, precise, a snap of steel meeting alloy at the exact seam. Sparks danced like stars along the edge of the champion's chest plate. Its system stuttered. Its lights dimmed. And then, impossibly, it knelt. The arena was silent. Not stunned. Not shocked. Silent. The usual roar of the crowd, the war cries, the betting algorithms, all ceased. Even the drones hovering above hung motionless in the sky. The ground itself seemed to inhale. The boy straightened, spear held steady. His chest rose, shoulders squared. Victory was not celebrated. It was recognized. The sands did not echo with cheers. They bent, bowed, kneeled, as if acknowledging something far older than competition. From the shadows, the human watched. No pride, no delight, no victory dance. Only the quiet, eternal satisfaction of a teacher watching a student understand. His gaze lingered on the boy, then shifted toward the horizon, where the rising suns lit the edges of the arena like molten gold. He turned finally, stepping away. His purpose here was done. The boy lowered his spear, breathing even. He looked across the arena, sensing the silence, a silence not empty but filled. Filled with awe, with fear, with understanding. And somewhere deep within him he realized he could now carry the lesson forward. Alone, if necessary. For the first time, he was not a student. He was a signal. And as he walked toward the exit, the entire galaxy seemed to lean forward, listening. The galaxy did not shake with fire. There were no fleets burning in orbit, no planets reduced to glass. It trembled in a quieter, more insidious way, through thought, through example, through the awakening of billions of minds. Across systems, across empires that had long believed fear was the only language, people began to question. Soldiers paused mid-order. Ministers hesitated mid-decree. Workers refused tasks that required cruelty. The ripple from a single child, standing alone in the sands of Velkhara, spread faster than any fleet, faster than any broadcast, faster than the laws of politics themselves. The boy, now no longer a boy, moved through the remnants of the tournament arena. Once broken, limping, uncertain, he had grown into a symbol, the child who stood. Statues were never erected for him, but the whispers of his deeds traveled further than any monument could. Children on distant worlds repeated the phrase like a prayer, stand, even when no one stands with you. Yet the human, the architect of this quiet revolution, was gone. He had vanished as silently as he arrived, leaving nothing behind but footprints in the sand and a single inscription etched into the arena wall. We rise when we help others rise. For years, the boy returned to that wall, tracing the letters with calloused fingers, memorizing their curve. They were simple words, yet in them lay the weight of a galaxy's potential. They were a compass. They were a warning. They were a promise. And now, as fleets gathered once more above Velkhara, it was not for conquest. Not for glory, not for empire, not for fear. Ships of every species, every creed, every rank, formed a constellation above the arena, a testament to unity, to choice, to the fragile, terrifying power of hope. The boy stood alone in the sand. his spear resting at his side, his eyes lifted to the sky. The light of 1,000 suns reflected in them. His voice, carrying across comm bands and transmissions, whispered softly, "I'll keep teaching." And though he spoke into the wind, though the human was not there to hear it, he felt it. The echo of a presence older than memory, wiser than time, patient as the stars themselves. Somewhere, perhaps beyond the veil of death, the old human smiled. The galaxy did not cheer. It did not erupt in fireworks. Instead, it listened, it learned. And in that silence, in that space between stars, the first lesson of a new era took root. Strength is not in domination. Power is not in fear. True might lies in the courage to stand and in the will to lift others when they cannot rise alone. The boy's shadow stretched long across the sands. He raised his spear once more, not as a weapon but as a symbol. And as the fleets above shimmered like a constellation reborn, he understood the gravity of what had begun. The human had left a path. It was his turn to walk it, he whispered again, voice steady. Determined, I'll keep teaching. And in that echo, the galaxy exhaled, a breath held for millennia finally released, trembling, alive, awake.